For today's lab, we'll be looking at profiles again and taking a look at simple corridors toward the end of the section. Let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is go to settings first and set some ambient settings up. So I'm going to go to drawing, edit drawing settings, ambient settings. I want to check my angle. Set that to a degree minute second format. That does impact doing inputs. So the first thing we're going to do is build a very simple surface utilizing a file that I have located out on the Blackboard site for you. So what we're going to do is insert, and you should have the lab called CET 250 Lab 7 Topo. I'm going to open that. Make sure your insertion points, scale factors, and rotations are set to 0. We're not going to explode it at this time. Go ahead and OK that. Go ahead and bring it in. Follow that up with a zoom extents just to make sure that it's there. Click on it. You should see it's a block reference. Okay, so what we're going to do is explode that block. Okay, and now you have individual polylines. So this is not the best method as we've talked about in the past, but this works very effectively and it's a good process to know. So what we're going to do is go ahead and create a surface. So we'll come over here, create a new surface. I'm going to call this existing topo. And then we see over here in surfaces we now have the existing topo surface showing up in the prospector. Go ahead to definition. We're going to add contours. The only data that we're going to have on this is contours today. So again, you're not going to have a very great surface, and you wouldn't want to use this for very good design, but for rough design it'll work, and for this process it'll work today. So we're going to go ahead and go to contours, add, and I'm going to set my weeding factors down to zeros. I don't want to lose any contour data on my vertexes. Select my contours, and there's my surface. Now you'll see some irregularities. One thing we talked about is right here. We've got some areas and issues here. That's an issue also, and that's because it's what I call short-circuiting. What you'd really need to do to find that would be a break line or some point inclusion. But we don't have that right now, so we're not going to worry about that. You can also see another area here. I just want to do a little cleanup. So what I'm going to do is click on my surface, and we're going to turn on our surface prop triangles to display, turn on my triangles. And you can see we've got a lot of triangles here that need to be taken care of. A few probably in here. I'm going to get rid of these right here and just clean some things up. So I'm going to again click on my surface, delete a few lines, take those out, delete a few lines over here, which are probably not really good lines. Take those out. This group right here definitely. And maybe a few more areas, but in general it's not going to impact us too much. So once we've got that, we'll go ahead and go back to our surface props. Toggle off my triangles. Instead of background, I think I'm going to set that to in 10 design. Apply that. And again, looking at your surface, comparing existing contoured file to what we've created, we see that we have a pretty good mix. So what we're ready to do now is create our horizontal alignment. So the second page in the lab gives you information. We have a coordinate and we have a bearing and a distance. So what we'll do is start out with a coordinate value, and I'm going to navigate to the Home tab, and I'm going to grab the line, create line by bearing. So for specifying my first point, I'm going to come over here to my transparent commands, grab my northing and easting and indicate the easting northing value 838.3675. Easting escape out of there, and you should be sitting right at that point. And so we want to travel southwest. That is a quadrant 3. And then we'll enter the bearing information followed by the distance. It should increment you ahead, but a lot of times it doesn't. So what you'll have to do, and this in the case that I'm doing here, I'm just going to escape and get back into this. Do the same thing. Create line by bearing. Attach that to the endpoint, and I'm ready to go. So go ahead and complete that section, and when you come back, we'll be ready to roll. Okay, we're back with our alignment now created. We haven't actually created the alignment, but we should have our lines on top of our topo as we see here. So what I'm going to do now is create an alignment. Create alignment from objects. I'm going to select that first line, second line, third line. If your alignment is not going right to left like that, reverse it, otherwise accept it. And this is our proposed alignment. If you want to give it a name, you can. Just make sure that it's set to a centerline line type. We will use a starting station of 0, no site. This will be proposed. Alignment label set is the major, minor, H, and V. And I'm going to not add curves at this time, but I will erase existing entities. So go ahead and OK that. We should see our baseline alignment in place. PVIs are indicated. So this, as we said before, is our initial baseline. So what we're going to do now is going to go ahead and add curves. If your third sheet rather, will have that information. If you look at that, you can see there's curve data there, delta, R, T, and L. If you look at that, the most pure quantity is probably the radius. It's an exact value. So that's what I'm going to tend to hold here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my alignment. And I want to go to the geometry editor. A couple of ways to do that. You can do it in this box here. This is my alignment grid view. Or we can also place curves in here that we've done before. So I'm going to go ahead and do a free fillet curve between two entities. I'm going to select my first one in, second one. This is my delta less than 180, yes, and then tell it what design property you're going to use. I'm going to use a radius, which is the default setting, so I'm going to just type in 300. Places that curve in there, and do the same thing here. This is also a 300-foot curve. Again, less than 180, 300. And now you have it restationed. Notice your baseline is still in place, but we actually now have the new alignment stationing. So we have a good horizontal alignment. Basically, this should be 0 here. Your ending station should be somewhere around 1788.84. So I'm going to go ahead and close this box. I'm just going to offset my alignments quickly so that we can see where the right-of-way is. We'll assume this is a 50-foot right-of-way. So I'm just going to use AutoCAD's offset command. Tell it 25. I'm going to go ahead and offset the center line, 25 that way, 25 that way. And again, we've talked about this before, but those are polylines, not alignments actually, but they are polylines and can be edited using polyline editing techniques. So at this point we are ready to proceed to the next step, which is to create a profile. And if you remember last week, we went through a several-step process. One is to create the profile itself by actually generating the files, set it up. Then we'll create our view profile, or profile view rather, and then ultimately our design profile. So the first thing I'm going to do is go here to my profile. I'm going to create a surface profile, which will sample for me. So what I'm going to do is sample my alignment, and remember, there could be multiple alignments in this file. Right now we just have the one, and we're going to look at the existing surface and add that. Tell it what range to sample over, and we're going to go ahead and just sample the whole range. So I'm going to leave those alone, and we're going to OK that, and you'll get a message that it's sampled, but we haven't actually created anything at this point. So what we're going to do now is go to Profile View. We will create a profile view, and it takes us through the Profile View wizard, which you don't actually, as we discussed last week, don't have to actually use, but it's probably good to go through a couple times just to get the feel for it, and then you can go through what you want and don't want when you use it, and you can generate things a lot quicker, because I could actually just create it right now. But make sure that our alignment is set to 1. It's going to give it a profile name. You can name it something different, otherwise it'll just take your parent name for the alignment and generate a number for it. I'm going to go ahead and use the major grids and HGPs. Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. We'll do a first view this time, just to show you the difference. Go to next. I'm going to go ahead and let it do your automatic range. I'm not going to worry about profile heights, and we'll change some of that later. And again, the only thing I really want to make sure is that this is set to dynamic for right now. Everything else looks good. We do want to set our bands to no bands right now. We'll deal with bands later. I'm not going to worry about this, so we're going to create a profile view. And I want my profile origin to be near the 0. And again, like you could be playing a profile. I'm going to go ahead and put my profile view up here. And there we have it. Now again, it came in based on the horizontal scale factor, and I probably didn't want that at a 40 scale. So I'm going to go ahead and change that, and then when we get in and do some edits, we'll change some of those things later. So I'm going to go ahead and set that now. Notice there's our profile, very stripped down, doesn't even show me stationing or anything. But there's my existing ground line. But remember, this is actually 0 running this way, up to 1700 this way. Now you do have the ability to flip these, and we will flip this a little bit later. Actually, we'll do it in a bit here. But the one thing about it that's somewhat strange is that when you do grades, you have to reverse the grade sign. So if you've got a 3% design grade, you're going to do it as a negative 3%. So you could either put your profile in this way and then flip it after the fact, or you can flip it before we get into the work. So I think what we'll do is we'll go ahead and change some view properties. So the one thing I want to do is click on the profile. We're going to look at the profile view properties first. Okay, and what we have here, if we go over to information, we're looking at a first view. Let's change that to the one that we used last week, was the major grids and HGPs. Stations, we're going to go ahead and leave that alone. Elevations for now, I think we're going to leave that. Profiles that are showing right now, that's good. Bands at this point we'll wait on. So I think the only change I made was in that one section, so we're going to go ahead and apply that, and there we have it. So notice now with this style, that's a little bit better because we are seeing that we've got stationing now at the bottom, elevation, and all of that. So let's go ahead and this time we're going to edit the profile view style a little bit. So some of the things that we talked about last week. Let's go start over here with graph. And at the graph we have a 50 horizontal because I set it there. If you don't have that, change that. Let's just see what a 10 looks like. Just kind of see. A little small. I think I will go back to the 5. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the profile view style, and I will set that back to 5. I kind of like that a little bit better. And again, you can change that. Alright, so what we're going to do is flip this guy. Here's where you go left to right, right to left. We're going to flip it. Let's take a look at grid. Let's do the clip vertical grid to the highest profile point. I kind of like that too. And I think we're just going to leave everything else alone. So we're going to go ahead and apply that, okay that, and you'll notice the changes that it's made. And now you can see that the 0 more or less correlates with that. And the nice thing about profiles is you can move them around in your drawing, so you don't have to worry about displacing them. If you were a land desktop user, you really had to pay attention to that, because uh, if you moved your grid, you were in trouble when you started doing profiles. Okay, so at this point we're ready to do our design. So we're going to move to the next sheet, and you'll notice we have a design showing up with a 3% coming into a PVI. It comes out at a 2.5% PVI. So we've got all of our location information. Now last week we drew our vertical curves, I believe at the same time that we created the tangents, and this time I'm going to do it slightly different. We're going to edit those after the fact. So what we're going to do is create tangents in place, and we're going to then edit the curves, because one of the types of curves I want to actually bring in is the unequal tangent vertical, or what they also call as an asymmetric in Civil 3D. So we're going to go to our profile section to create our profile. So we're going to go to Profile Creation Tools, select your profile view. It will generate this box for me. Okay, so it's going to attach it to this alignment, give it a profile name. We're creating a design profile. I'm going to go ahead and do a complete label set on this. So I'm going to OK that. And over here, what we want to do is make some setting changes. I'm going to, instead of last week, we went to the curve settings, and notice you can do different types of curves in here: parabolic, circular, asymmetric. And if you do asymmetric, once you turn that on, you notice this becomes active. So we're going to leave this all alone right now. And what I'm going to do is actually create tangents, or draw tangents without curves. So what I'm going to basically do is just place PVI, 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 and we will come back and edit that after the fact. So we're going to go ahead and click on that now. Should be asking me to specify a start point. What we can do over here is just actually snap to it, so we're going to meet that exact. Now make sure you hit the red point. Okay, now what it's asking me is to do another endpoint. Now you could literally, as a designer, just come in here and kind of eyeball stuff and click it and get grade and station information, and then edit that after the fact. Since we have a little bit more exact information, what we're going to do is enter that using our transparent tools over here. And the one we're going to use again that I prefer is my profile grade station. It allows me to hold my grade explicit and calculate the elevation of the PVI, giving it a station. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that. It's going to ask me to select my profile view, which I will do. Now, here's where it gets a little strange, because we're generating it right to left. We have a negative % grade. We're going to enter that as a positive 3. And station will be equal to 250. And you notice what's happening is it generated the line correctly for you, so it went down just like we wanted it to. So the next grade is a 250 plus, so we're going to enter that as a negative 250. And it looks like it's going to go down, but what's going to happen when we enter the station 800, it actually reverses. And we're going to go to the next station grade. We've got a negative 2%, so we're going to enter that as a positive 2% to a PVI of 1350. And again, it's doing what I want it to do there. In the last station, we don't really have an ending station, so let's just take that out to about 1700 or so, and then we can extend that after the fact. So we're going to use a negative 3%, then we're going to go to 1700 and go ahead and hit enter and enter again. And if we escape out of there, we should see that what we have in place is our tangents. So at this point now we can enter information specifically on these tangents. It knows the alignment there is there. So you could do a couple things. One thing would be to go to your grid here, and you can enter information right in here. And one of the things that we will fix would be the end station of 1700. I'm going to change that to about, let's go to about 17, I believe our station ends at 1780, so let's go to 1775. Now, it changed my grade, so what I want to make sure I do is I'm going to change that. That should be a positive 3%, so I'm going to fix that back. Okay. Notice also what it's done once we've done that is it's gone out and labeled this information for us. So like our baseline that we had down here in the horizontal, we don't have any curve information in here yet. But do check to make sure your grades all look good, so they're labeled correctly and they're doing what you want. Elevations are forced based on that calculation. So we're going to add some curves here, and we're going to do several different types. Like I said, one way is to just go here, and we're going to generate a what's called more free vertical curves, and we're going to do a free parabolic curve PVI based. So I'm going to click here just near the PVI, that's all you need, and it's going to ask you to either give it a curve length or a k-factor or a pass-through point. What we have is a curve length, so we know that this is a 200-foot vertical. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that, and you notice that that's been put in place. And since I have the same type of curve here, I'm going to click on that PVI, and I'm going to also enter 200 for that. That's based on our design. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and escape out of there. Should label that information for us. And again, we might want to look at that, pull that down. I'm going to bring that back down into the grid a little bit, which you would normally see it. You can look at your information. Notice you've got your BVC, EVC. This happens to be a sag curve, so we've got a low point indicated. This one is also a sag curve with a low point. So we've got all that information in there. Now this last curve, if you notice on my plans, I've indicated it as a 500-foot vertical. And what we're going to do is go ahead and enter this as a asymmetric just to change it up. I'll still use 500 feet as my total length, but let's use about maybe we'll use 200 in and 300 out. So in this case, we're going to go back up to this profile tool here, more free verticals. We're going to use a free asymmetric parabolic. So we're going to pick near the PVI. Wants to know L1, so we said 200, and then we're going to use 300. And we can escape out of there. What we now have in place is a parabolic asymmetric, or what we call an equal tangent. And you'll notice the way it labels, the labeling still basically tells you that it is a symmetric vertical curve, but it actually does have two curves in there in place. You can label some of that information. You would have to go into the label style and create that individually. So that would be one of those things that's a little bit more involved once you get into it. Alright, let's take a look at the profile grid view, and we'll see when we look at this that we actually do have everything in place here. So you can easily change the stations, your grades in and out. Notice it does tell me sag and crust type curves. This is unchangeable here because your algebraic difference is based on your grades in and out. Profile curve length, notice that you can change those, but if we come over here, because it knows it's an asymmetric, we have a 200 and a 300. So if we wanted to change that, for instance, from let's say we want to go a 100 and a 400, it's just as simple as doing that, making the change. And you can notice the change that I've done there, and that may reflect more what I want to see, or maybe I want to go do it the other way, see if that 300 the 200 works better. So again, you've got some flexibility in how you play with these, and once you have your profile in, it's going to be great when we go to the next step.